Dear TV watchers, I want to tell you today about freedom of belief, freedom of opinion and freedom of speech. Let me start with the freedom of belief. We've heard a lot from the opposition side about how we need to protect the freedom of belief. But let's look at the reality. Is it protected nowadays? Is the freedom of belief really what it's supposed to be? We see this flourishing in our Western countries, in US, in Europe, almost all over the world, we would think. But let us look at Afghanistan, let us look at Pakistan, let us look at Saudi Arabia, at many Muslim countries where the freedom of belief is being perversed, is being used in order to indoctrinate young human beings, young boys, young girls, and make them into terrorists. The prominent example are the Palestinians in the territories of the Palestine, who are being indoctrinated from the very, very youth to become martyrs, to die fighting in believers, infidels, by blowing themselves up. Do we want to understand the freedom of belief in this way? I don't think so. We have to stop this indoctrination. And who is doing this indoctrination? Mostly and foremostly are the imams of Islamic imams, but also the television, which is being broadcast in Arabic language, the Al-Jazeera, the most prominent among them. That's why we want to forbid them. That's why we want to ban it. Then let me come to the freedom of opinion. We've heard a lot about. We've heard about freedom of opinion being very important, and we agree it is very important. But let us look at the borders of the freedom of the opinion. Let us look at the foreign influence that my predecessor from the opposition has talked about. We've had prominent examples in the history where this freedom of opinion has been used against democratic societies in order to destroy them. I will name the the Red Army structure, Rote Armeefraktion in German, which has been indoctrinated, yes, dear weak from the opposition, it's been indoctrinated by communist ideology, using the open Western media, and then used to carry out terrorist attacks on the German soil. It took years upon years to make it harmless, and then only after 25 years or so have the last members of this organization been found out. We've seen also the tape of Osama bin Laden being broadcast shortly before the election in the United States, in hope of influencing the election itself. That's why we are afraid of the foreign influence on the information, on our media, and on the information business in general. That's why we have to fight against it. We have to set the border, dear members of the opposition, and we have to defend ourselves. We cannot leave the ground to the terrorists in order to spread their hate, spread their ideology without any curbs from our side. And now let me come to the freedom of speech, the most cherished of the values that we believe in the Western democratic world. What is the freedom of speech? The freedom of speech is the freedom to express one's opinions, one's beliefs, which I've talked about, what one believes in politically. But is it freedom to incite people to violence? Is it the freedom to spread hate of other denominations, of other religions, of other systems, or even the hate to the very democratic system which allows this expression of the opinion? I do not think so, ladies and gentlemen. I think the freedom of speech ends in the moment when someone starts inciting hate. It ends when someone starts to use this freedom of speech in order to convince some other human being to commit a crime, to commit an act of terror, or to commit some other atrocity. Therefore, also there, I'm sorry to say this, we have to set some border. We, of course, have to defend those ideals of freedom of speech, freedom of belief, freedom of opinion. We have to defend them, and so we will, with all our force. And therefore, and because of this, we propose to ban Al-Jazeera as a very example which is showing the total disregard for the values that we want to defend.
Well, Al-Jazeera International strives to become a competitor of CNN, and CNN is a very popular channel and very reputed. I mean, do you think if they use Al-Jazeera International use the opportunity to hire new terrorists, do you think they would really do it the way you said?
Okay, I understand you think they will broadcast some other sort of program to our audience than they are broadcasting to the Arab audience, as far as I could understand your question. But it's not the point. The point is, to the Arab audience, they are emitting the message of hate. They are emitting the tapes of non-terrorists like al-Zarqawi or like Osama bin Laden, and they are therefore inciting the violence. They also broadcast the interviews with other non-terrorists or with the ideologists of the terroristic movement, and therefore they have to be stopped. Because we can't accept, I don't think they will stop at our door and say, well, now we no longer show the problems in our light, we will now start showing that that Western democracy is okay. They will keep inciting violence just like they did in the Arab world. They will keep fighting with all their might against our democratic society, and we have to do something to stop them. We can't just sit with our hands folded and wait for something to happen. We can't allow them to breed next generation of the terrorists, this time on our very soil, this time of our poor and excluded. We have to defend our people from this fiendish propaganda and therefore defend our values, the whole system which is being built on the freedoms, but also on checks and balances within those freedoms, which allows the proper balance, proper equilibrium of powers, and therefore allows us to keep those freedoms. Therefore, because of freedom of belief, because of freedom of opinion, and because of the freedom of speech, let us ban Al Jazeera and defend those freedoms, not just talk about it. Thank you very much.